Okay, so keep this in mind. The human lifespan on the planet, you have to remember that your planet is suspended in midair. Ain't nothing holding this planet up. You have to remember that I spoke about this before. Once you zoom out of this planet, you realize how minuscule this planet is. There's so much life out there. Mind-blowing life. I'm talking about the universe, right? The nebulas, right? Talking about the different galaxies, all the black. There's some terrifying things out in that universe that man's eyes couldn't behold. Like I used to tell my son, what if you stood in front of Jupiter and it was just you and all its glory, all its, in its full size, and you in your full size as a human being. And of course, Jupiter towers and towers and towers, and then it just gets more, it's humongous, right? So I'm saying there's a red hole on Jupiter, right? I mean, it's called that red spot, that red eye or whatever it is that scientists keep talking about. What if you were out in space, suspended in space, standing right in front of Jupiter? Do you know how terrifying that would be? There's some things there are some things that are too celestial and majestic for human eyes to behold. Right, kind of like the full nature of angels. Like that's why they say all throughout the Bible, when mankind encountered angels, they would always fall on their knees and worship them, and the angels would be like, "Don't, the Father is the one that you should worship," right? Okay, so you got to remember that it's the same thing. There's no difference. You live a supernatural life, whether you admit it, whether you can believe that or not, which is why a lot of people go through, a lot of people, it's taboo to talk about it, right? But really it's not, because a lot of conspiracy theories are coming out now. And, it's been this way for a minute. I've been in this truth for a long time. That's why you get a lot of paranormal activities. Paranormal activities aren't natural, you guys. Right. So what is that? So what does paranormal activity basically tell you? That there is another world with other entities that are disembodied, right? Because that's what ghosts are. That's what spirits are, right? And millions of, we're all grown now. We're all adults now. We've all encountered some type of, paranormal, whether, when we're small or grown, whatever. We've all been through some type of paranormal activity before. Okay, so there it is. There it is, guys. We're adults. We can talk about things like this. So yes, your life is, there's nothing natural about your life, because you're living in a third dimensional realm with fourth dimensional entities living right between you. So what am I trying to say? So in your world, there's an invisible realm in your world. Okay, which is where the ghosts and the disembodied spirits come from, if you've ever experienced stuff like that, right? And millions of people have. It's not something that you can say is uncommon. You know what I mean? We've all experienced these things. So there's nothing natural about your life. What you got to understand, though, is that you live temporarily and you die unexpectedly, right? The lifespan for human beings is very short, very temporary, right? You got to remember that. I used to say that Caesar ruled for 400 years, right? Caesar ruled for about 400 or 500 years. He ruled Rome for about 400 to 500 years, right? Okay, can you imagine that type of ego, that type of pride? You know what I mean? If you become a president, can you imagine the type of pride that you would have if you don't have any self-control? Can you imagine the type of ego that our rulers have? Because you got to remember that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, where did they get that from? It's that pride inside of men when they get elevated, right? You know what I mean? It's hard to abdicate from such a high position. You know what I mean? You feel like you rule the world. Well, can you imagine the type of ego and the type of pride that Caesar had? Can you imagine ruling for 400 or 500 years? Hey, look, I'm telling you right now, the type of feeling that I have inside of me, man, can't nobody take me off of my throne. Like, so I can imagine how Caesar probably felt like God ruling Rome. But you have to remember one thing, that what happened? Rome fell in one day. Where's Caesar now? Okay, so what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that, look, we're not as powerful. We're nowhere near as powerful as Caesar is. So how much more should we consider the life that we're living? How much more do you want to live? How much more does that make you kind of want to live on, the highest vibrations of life? High vibrations just come with discipline. That's all it is. What does a person mean by high vibration? It just means that there's two ways you can think in life. There's two type of decisions you can make. It's always going to fall under the elements of good or bad. You can never escape that. Okay, that's why the duality colors is black and white, right? And what does that represent? That represents good and evil. You can't escape that, guys. Ever since you came out of the womb, you've been taught about the fundamentals of making good and bad decisions. You can't escape it. When you go out into the world, we see good things and we see bad things. We see things that make us, frown, and we see things that lighten up our day. There's only two ways things can ever go. Okay, it can go left or it can go right. Okay, there is no gray area. Okay, so you live temporarily and you die unexpectedly. That's something that you want to think about. Okay, because wherever Caesar is right now, you got to remember that the Bible says that it's appointed for man to die one time and then the judgment. And it also says that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Most High. There's absolutely no way that you're going to get away from the creator of the cosmos. There's absolutely no way you're going to get away from that, having to die and standing before the Almighty, because Caesar thought that would never happen to him. You got to remember, and he was more powerful than any of us walking on this planet. Solomon even, and he backslid from the Most High, and he had 300 wives. I mean, can you imagine I'm just walking around, and I talk about I got pride issues, and I'm nowhere near on the pedestal these men were on. And I deal with my little pride and my little ego too. So could you imagine? And all these men had to leave this turf, had to leave the land and stand before the Almighty. None of them could have kept their life. As much ego, as much power as they thought they had. And that's the problem now, right? Man, we're trying to figure out how we can extend our life, how we can live for eternity. It'll never happen, guys. Okay, you live temporarily and you die unexpectedly. Okay, so what am I trying to say? Try not to focus too much on your third dimension. You got to eat, you got to pay your bills. I understand that, but you got to remember that you're a spiritual being living a human existence. Okay, I mean, you're a spiritual being living a human experience. I'm not going to say an existence. Yes, you do exist, but the experience, it kind of gets through to the point that this is just temporarily. You're 100% a spiritual being, and you're just living a human experience for right now. So some of your loved ones are going to go before you. You might go before some of your loved ones. One thing is for sure, though, is that you live temporarily and you die unexpectedly. So how much more does that make you want to think about your life?